Hi, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Bainbridge here. Today we're going to take a look at writing a race response. A race response is a quality reader's response that includes evidence from the text that is, of course, explained. Let's take a look at this acronym. R stands for restating the question as an answer. A stands for answering all parts of the question. C stands for citing your evidence from the text. And E, explaining how the evidence supports your answer. This slide also gives you some sentence stems on how you can add the evidence to flow nicely in your paragraph. You can say according to the text or the text says. After you cite your evidence, you're going to need to explain your answer. So you should be very clear. Say, this explains, or this shows, this means, or this proves, to explain why that piece of evidence supports your thinking. This unit, we've been working on character traits. So our reader's response for Unit 2, again, has to deal with character traits. This anchor chart can help you if you're not sure on a similarity between your two characters. Let's take a look at an example based on Monday's shared reading text. We read City Kid, Country Kid, two letters of girls written to each other in the summer. We were able to take notes. We're always going to want to take notes or annotations before we write a reader's response to collect our ideas and to collect our evidence before we get started. So I learned that Jen cares about the environment and Kinsey is working on horseback riding skills so that she can compete in a competition. So let's take a look at our question for this reader's response. It says, after reading City Kid, Country Kid, explain a character trait that both characters demonstrate. Use details from both letters to support our ideas. You'll notice that the 5th grade teachers have created a rubric that helps us follow a race response. The first thing we need to do is restate the question as an answer, and then answer all parts of the question. So I want my readers to understand what it is that I'm answering. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with my race response. And I've just dragged my rubric over here to my workstation. And I need to restate the question as answer. The best way to do that is to tell me what text you are talking about. So you can use that same phrase. After reading Country Kid, City Kid, a character trait that both characters demonstrate, and then I'll give you my answer in that same sentence. So after reading Country Kid, City Kid, Country Kid, I learned that both Jen and Kinsey, it's probably a good idea to tell me the character names, are determined. So when I looked back at my notes, I saw that both girls were working hard to achieve their goal, whether their goal was to help the environment or to achieve their horseback riding competition goals. So I thought that both were determined to reach their goals. So that was the similar trait that I decided upon. Okay, my next paragraph my next sentence will then give an evidence for Jen and then an evidence for Kinsey. So you'll see that green, this cited evidence, is happening twice because I should have 2 pieces of text evidence since I am comparing both of these characters. And then I should have 2 blue sentences because I need to explain both those pieces of text evidence separately. So to find text evidence to support that Jen is determined, I'm going to skim and scan back through my text. You know what? I think working 4 days a week during your summer shows that you are determined to help the environment, because I know I wouldn't want to be doing landscaping and maintenance chores. I'd rather be at the beach or on a bike ride. So I'm going to choose that piece of evidence for Jen. And instead of saying in the text it said, I'm going to actually say that Jen wrote, because this is a letter. So I am going to say Jen wrote that 4 days a week I worked with the conservation program doing landscaping and maintenance chores. This shows, again, there's my transition phrase, this shows that Jen is determined to help the environment because she spent time during her summer volunteering. You'll notice that the rubric has the explanation out of 2 points. What I see a lot of times is students just writing this. This shows that Jen is determined. Well, how? Explain to me what you were thinking there. So you really want to explain maybe a little bit of a summary of the text as well as what was happening in context with this quote so that you can get those full explanation points. I should be able to read your reader's response without reading the text and still believe your inference. So be sure you have a word like because in there. Okay. Next, I'm going to go and find a piece of evidence for Kinsey. So how is she determined to reach her horseback riding goals? Well, it says that she focused on training and riding competition skills because she was wanting to participate in this 4-H fair in the fall. So I need to type that word for word, but I need a transition first. Instead of saying in the text it said, since this is a letter, I'm going to say that Kinsey replied. Kinsey replied and said that I focused on training and riding competition skills because I hope to participate in the 4-H fair in October. This shows that Kinsey is determined to help. This shows that Kinsey is determined to reach her goals. We always want to reread our writing to make sure there's sentence fluency. Determined to reach her horseback riding goals because she spent time during her summer training. Once again, she's not just determined, but explain how it shows she's determined with this word, because. So if I look back to self-assess, I can see that yes, I've restated the question as an answer, including the title of my texts. I've answered the question. I've come up with a similar character trait. I have a piece of relevant text evidence that shows that she's determined for Jen, and I've explained that with a little bit of a summary of the context of that quote and a summary of the text. I also have a piece of evidence for Kinsey, and I've explained my evidence. The last part of our rubric is to make sure our conventions are right? We are 5th grade writers, and we need to make sure that we are capitalizing our sentences and our proper nouns, which would be our text names and our character names. We also need to use correct punctuation. When I look through, I see that I have, yes, capitalized the first letter in each word of my title. I also see that every time I write the character's name, Jen or Kinsey, it is capitalized. And the beginning of each of my sentences is capitalized. Okay? Finally, after each of these, we should kind of have a clue that we should be putting a period. Okay? Anytime we take a big breath, we should be taking a period. So after reading City Kid, Country Kid, I even put a comma there to take a pause. I learned that both Jen and Kinsey are determined, period. One thing that we can add is a comma during this transition before I put my quote. Since I said Jen wrote that, and then I'm going into a full sentence from the text, I can add a comma. Then after my full sentence, I put a quote and my period on the outside of that quotation mark. Looks like here my period was on the inside. I'm going to fix that. Your period should always go on the outside of your quotation mark, and then we should have a comma before that quotation. All right, everybody, good luck writing your very first full-on reader's response, and be sure to use this slide as a resource. Be sure to use this slide as a resource. Feel free to self-check and self-grade, but your teachers will be giving you feedback right on this slide, and you'll be able to see if you got a 0 for that criteria. That is what you would need to go ahead and fix. All right, everybody, happy writing.